Hi, this is Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Today I'm going to show you a painting that I pulled out of my old photo album. It's a painting that I did a long time ago, or at least I did a plein air sketch, sitting in a parking lot in my car. And it had a very misty scene in the morning and just a little lighting from the street lights from the parking area. But I found it to be a very interesting challenge to go ahead and get that painted. So I did it the other day, and I want to share that with you. So let's go to my painting table and let's get started. This shows the reference photograph of the parking lot and the lights and my design sketch. And this was the drawing that I did from that sketch and transferred it to a piece of 140-pound watercolor paper. And then I did a light wash there of using yellow ochre and some ultramarine blue to give me at least a background start of a light wash. And now I'm adding another wash using yellow ochre, and I'm going to mix in some ultramarine blue. But I'm going to start with a warm wash here in this portion. As I go down, this will be warm, a warm background, and that's to simulate the lighting from the lamps in the parking lot. And I'm going to let this run down to the bottom of the page. I've got it at a slight slant, about 5 degrees, 5 or 10 degrees. And on the outside edges, I'm going to put in some ultramarine blue to give me a cooler area in toward the shadows. So it's going to be warm in the middle here, and cooler on the outside, and toward the bottom I'll also put in some cooler color, ultramarine blue. So this is a graded wash, painted at a slant of the color. We're going to keep the paint moving as it flows down to the bottom of the page. Now I'm also there's a building there in the background, so I'm also painting around the edge. That's the lighting. That's the major light source there in my impact area. The impact area is going to be the light source reflecting the light onto a building, edge corner of a building. Now I'm putting in the darker values, or cooler values here. That will be the parked vehicles and the roadway. Putting this way, I'm using a number 16 round Holbein synthetic brush, which is in my inventory on my website, everettswatercolors.com. And it's a very nice brush. It holds a lot of paint. Now here I'm adding a little bit of orange. I'm putting orange. Now that's the impact area building. It has a color. So that's the only portion in the painting that has really any brighter color. The rest is all going to be in shadow, or it's going to be misty because the lighting was early morning and all we had was the street lights. So the lighter value there and the white paper showing will be the impact area, the source of light and the reflection off of that building. And that light's coming forward down toward the parked vehicles in the foreground. Now finishing up with that cooler shadow area at the bottom of the painting. Keeping the paint moist so I can move it and also blend in. I don't want any hard edges here at this point. The only hard edges will be around the edge of the building right now. Now I'm taking this is a flat brush, This is a silver brush, half-inch flat brush with natural hair. And what I'm doing is I'm lifting some of that darker color, making a highlight for a parked vehicle there on the roof. And also there's a sidewalk next to that building. I'm lifting some of that color to give me a lighter value. So by taking a thirsty brush, which is a brush that takes all the water out of the brush, and then rubbing it across the moist paint or even dry paint, will lift that color up and give me a lighter value. So that's a good lifting technique to reduce the color or to capture a highlight in a background or anywhere in a painting. So we did a wash. Now I'm blending the edges now of that light source, and there's no real exact white, so I'm going to try to put a little bit of color on top, but just very, very minimal. There I'm taking some of that color off, but I want to just dull that white down just a little bit because it was a misty morning, very early in the morning, but just the light coming through the mist shining on that building. And here I'm taking the damp edge of that round brush, number 16 round brush, and I'm softening up some of the edges. And I continued. Now I re-wet those areas that I had lifted before. And I added a little dampness there, and then I rubbed the paint with just a damp brush, and then with a tissue just lift it up a little bit, so make it a little bit lighter there. Okay, now I'm going in with a flat brush again, that half-inch flat brush, silver brush, and I'm going to add in a little more value next to that building. So there's the shadow shows up against that building, which will show the edge, which will show that off a little bit. That's what I want. That's the dark against the light, which will give us a nice contrast there in the impact area. So the edge of that building has got a dark shadow against it, and behind it's all dark. And here I'm just taking a damp brush and I'm softening up those edges, so we have a gradual shift of light from the light source back into the shadow. And that little half-inch flat brush gives me a nice sharp edge for a straight line, which is the building and also the ground. I'm softening up that layer of color so that there's no hard edges. Just blending the paint that's on the paper. Now here I'm going to add a little bit of darkness in the background behind that building, so it's a continual. It's in shadow back there. So again, that defines the building edge. Okay, as I broke away there, I added in a dark portion of the windows of that building. It'll give a little bit of interest and also show that it's a building with some windows showing. That's about all I could see at that time of the morning and with a limited amount of light shining. You could just see the building, you could see the windows, you could see the shadows. Now here I'm mixing up some extra dark, and I'm going to start painting in the silhouette of those parked vehicles. And that's all you could see this time of morning with the lighting and so forth. You could just see the silhouette and the highlights. Whoops! I hit the brush on the paper. I can take care of that. Just wipe it up with. As soon as that happens, pick it up with a piece of tissue. I'll take care of that a little bit later. Now this happens to be a parked truck, so there's a little highlight there on the back edge of that truck backing. So that's where that little wipe area shows up. I'm going to have a little bit of the back lights will show. Down here toward the bottom will be the large bumper on the back of that truck. So I'm going to be painting around the edges with that dark color. And there, the color was mainly, I used Ultramarine Blue, a little bit of Quinacridone Violet. I even add a little bit of Payne's Gray in there to make it a nice dark value, nice dark color. So it wasn't just one paint, it was a mixture of 3 or 4 colors. Now here I'm defining that back bumper, which is what I was highlighting when I lifted that color off in one of the previous steps. Now I'm going to take a smaller brush. This is a number 8 round silver brush. A little more detail for the bottom and also underneath the truck. The wheels showing. The back wheels underneath the bumper. In perspective. It's got a slight angle. And then there's another parked vehicle further back, which I'm going to moisten the paper a little bit, and I'm going to put that dark mix into this silhouette. Another silhouette. This vehicle is closer to me as I was painting this or sketching it, and therefore it'll be much larger. So it was a closer vehicle, so it'll be a much larger shape. The real challenge here on this painting is to get the realistic lighting of the limited lighting, the shadow effect, and the amount of light that's reflected off of the objects, the building, and some of the vehicles you'll see. Now here's an edge here which I'm going to have reflection off the top of the roof of this particular vehicle. I'm leaving a little bit of light value on the top. And correcting the shape of that, looks like the front wheel of that particular vehicle. And then perspective, get the angle of the bottom edge. And then painting in the back wheel. So this will be the first layer. I'm just getting the shape in there, just to define where I want to put that particular subject. Now I'm mixing up some yellow value mixed in with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of blue, and there's a little patch of grass near that building, and it comes forward. There's grass there on the parking lot, so I'm putting that in there right now. I'm putting in a dull green, and it gets darker as I come forward. And there's a little sidewalk there underneath the building. I left that, and there was also a path of light from another light beyond the or past this other vehicle in the back. There was another light closer by, which had a series. It gave a little path of light shining on the ground, so I decided to put that in. So I got some good horizontals in this painting, which gives me a little interest. Got horizontals, got some. Now there's a nice diagonal from the curb of the ground there in the parking lot next to the street. Now I'm going back. Now I'm mixing a much darker. There, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of Quinacridone Violet, Ultramarine, a little bit of Payne's Gray. And what I'm going to do now is there's a forward vehicle in front of the truck. And it's just a small vehicle, but I want to capture the shape there. It's got a lighter value because it's closer to the source of light. So it's got it was a lighter vehicle also, but also was closer to the light, so it would have a lighter value. But it was parked in front of the truck. We capture that shape. Now I added some more of that orange now. I'm going to put a little bit of shadow on that building. Now there's the structure of the building, a little bit of shadow on the architecture of the building, showing the side of the, looks like a column there. Then there's a roof line up at the top. So kind of a little bit of definition on that building. And add a little more definition there, just a little darker value to show as a shadow on the edge of that building. Now in the impact area, that needs to give a little more detail, a little smaller marks back there in the impact area. Now here comes the extra darks on this forward vehicle. So adding more, I added Payne's Gray here in the puddle with those other colors to make it a lot darker, because they're definitely in shadow with a light behind. So it was backlit with the lights, so it looked like it was dark on this side of the particular vehicle. Now getting the shapes and getting the angles is very important here to make it look realistic. The perspective, showing the angles going forward. Those are good directional lines also. The diagonals also point toward the impact area. So that's a nice lead-in for the painting. You got the vehicles pointing that way. You got the diagonals moving toward the impact area. So that's a very nice lead-in to the painting to tell the story of the parked vehicles and to where I want your eyes to go. Now I'm painting another vertical. This is a vertical. This is important. This was another pole. It was a pole with one of the lamp posts that was also located here. It was up forward. It also provided some more light. So it was another lamp post. So I'm putting it in there right now. At least another vertical. So I got some very dynamic horizontals, and I've got a nice vertical, which adds a little bit of interest to the painting. And add a little bit of dark toward the bottom area because it's in shadow. The top area is a little lighter. Now I'll mix up a little more of this orange. I'm going to go back into the impact area now again, and I'm going to add a little more detail to that building. There's that white area. I'm going to cut it back down a little bit. I'm going to add some orange color, which was the color of the building, orange or brick, orange brick building. So now I'm going back and adding a little more detail and defining a little bit more of that edge. I'm going to leave a little bit of white up there at the top, because there was a white top, which was the brightest part of the building. So adding more color and more detail to the impact area gives me a good focal point for the eye to follow and the eye to catch real quickly. This time of the morning with the lighting, this is about the only thing that was visible was that building and these parked vehicles in the parking lot. Adding a little more darks. I'm going to shape that forward wheel a little bit better. And I'm going to add some shadows that are being cast by the vehicle with that backlighting. So now we're putting a shadow pattern into the on the ground, cast by the vehicle. The cast shadows were dark, but they have to go along. They have to go along with the story of the angle. They have to have the same angles as the rest of the painting. Again, this will lead you in. This leads the eye into the painting. Another diagonal, pointing the way into the impact area. A nice lead in. And then I'm working on the shadow pattern under that truck forward, adding a wheel, adding a four wheel, front wheel, then adding a shadow underneath that vehicle, the cast shadow from the lighting that's out there. And the cast shadow will continue on out toward the left side of the painting. And a little bit of shadows on that forward vehicle in front of the truck. A little bit of grill work or part of the dark part of the car in shadow. Adding a little detail to the forward truck, just to show the pattern, and then leaving that little highlight there from the lighting on the edge. Now, right now I'm planning on, I got a little bit of gray now. I'm going to go ahead and cast a shadow from that lamp that's going across the whole area. And it gives a path of light that shows between, in front of that, just in front of that vehicle. So a little cast shadow, again, it gives a little path of light that's being being cast by that lamp that's up there on the next to the branch. Now adding another shadow up just to tone down that color a little bit around that building, because the only thing that was visible that morning was the corner of the building, and the shadows and the silhouettes of the vehicles. Now adding a little more shadow, a little darker value up in the corner. mixing up a dark value with a large. I'm using a 3/4 inch. I'm using a 3/4 inch brush here. This is a Holbein 3/4 inch, nice big flat brush. Adding a little more color up here in the foreground because this was in shadow and it needs to be darker. The darker value comes forward because we're closer. We can see more of it in detail. So it's much darker. So adding another layer of dark pigment on top of the existing dark will make that nice and dark, which looks like it's in shadow. Now a little detail, adding up a little bit of red. I'm going to put a stoplight or a backlight on the truck on one side, and a little bit it's in shadow on the left side. Now there's the final painting. I'm calling it Parking Lot Lights. Then I put it behind the mat. Boy, it really looks nice. I really like that one. Good job. All my supplies I used today were available on everestwatercolors.com. Come to my website and check out my supply page. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, select the bell, and be notified of my next video. Leave some comments and questions. I'll get back to you. See you in the next video.